Hey, what's going on, guys? VenomousFatman here again, here on the BITT, the Boys in the Tube for ShiftedTU.com, talking with Gene Hoyle from Nerd Nation. And we got into a whole bunch of stuff earlier in the first two parts. If you have not listened to them yet, please go back and listen to part ones and part two. If they were awesome. We talked about the origin of Nerd Nation. We talked about his introduction into comics. We talked about Comic Con, conventions, MegaCon, all kinds of stuff. Now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this. We're going to talk about, comic movies. We're going to talk about some of the big movies that have come out recently, as well as some that are like right around the corner. Let's get into the one that everybody, is talking about, the new hotness in the streets, the Avengers. So, Gene, kind of give us, a little bit of your impressions from when you saw the Avengers.
Let me give you my initial impression. Holy crap! This is an awesome movie.
That's the same
Uh,
thing I said.
I've actually seen it twice, and I'm definitely gonna see it again. Here's a great story of how good this movie is. The first night I saw it, I went with my buddies Thursday at midnight.
Yeah,
We did a
that
special.
was the best time to go. That was
Oh yeah,
awesome.
definitely. Well, we set up something with the local comic store here down here, past, present, future comics, and we had like 100 seats and it was filled with us guys, from the comic store. So I got not only did I get to see it at midnight, but I got to see it with our kind, our people.
Yeah.
So that was cool. But then on Saturday, I wanted to take my two kids. Excuse me, I have two kids, 5 and 8, and they wanted to go see the movie. So we went after dinner, and my 5-year-old hadn't gotten as much sleep as he probably should have to be going to the movies at like 6, 7 o'clock. So he was kind of tired already. And I was like, oh man, he's gonna sleep through this whole movie. It's gonna suck. And we get there in the very first 5 minutes or so, he's starting to fall asleep. I'm like, wow, he's not even going to see the opening of the movie. Then the action starts. This kid stood up or he sat up and he did not close his eyes for 2.5 hours.
Wow.
He was cheering and laughing, and everything the Hulk did was awesome for him.
Oh
And
yeah.
my kid's always been in the comics because he's my kid, but now he's really becoming a fan because of Avengers.
That's awesome. I mean, let's talk specifically about the movie because, like I said, Thursday night was like the night to go see that movie. I mean, when I went to the theater, I went down here at Flippers Cinemas and I saw it that midnight, and everybody in that theater, it was packed. Like literally every theater, I'm pretty sure that had a midnight showing for it was packed because everybody was going to go see that movie. And every single, like every scene that the Hulk was in, or when there was action, or when there was just humor, everybody was on their feet or just on the edge of their seats, cheering, laughing, clapping, all kinds of stuff. It was that good of well handled movie. But overall, what was your kind of one pick or one specific thing that you loved about this movie?
Well, I would have to say, and a lot of people, I mean, there's so much, but if I had to pick one thing that really stood out for me, again, it was the performance by Loki, Tom Hiddleston as Loki. There are a few moments in the movie. There's a moment with Thor and Loki where Thor's just basically telling Loki, cut this crap out. Let's just, stop doing
Let's
what you're
go home.
doing. And yeah, let's go home. And there's that look on Loki's face for just a moment where he really wishes he could say yes and he doesn't. And I was like, wow, it's just powerful stuff. That and everything they did with the Hulk, um, the handling of the Hulk, the feeling that cutting loose every once in a while is not such a bad thing. Because I'll be honest with you, the Ang Lee Hulk movie
Yeah.
made me want to put a bullet in my mouth. It was so depressing.
Oh man,
It
you
was
and
like, oh
everybody else
man.
pretty much. That was a terrible movie. Just as far as the handling of the character, what was interesting about Mark Ruffalo's Hulk is that not only was he the one guy on the entire cast that really had to do like the most work because everybody like came from different movies, like really with an established like okay, these guys know what they're doing with this character, and Mark Ruffalo was like you didn't really know what to expect, but every time he got on screen, he was just he was gold for the most part.
Well, sure, you had to recreate the Hulk from the ground up basically for this movie. I mean, as far as his motivations and at the same time not ignoring what had come before. And they did a pretty good job with that. And what I'm hoping is that this does lead to a Hulk movie, but I'm hoping Marvel uses their head this time. There was one thing that was missing from the first two movies, and even the Norton one, which I liked, didn't have enough humor in it. And the reason for that is there was really no one for the Hulk to bounce off of, and have humorous things happen. In the comics, right from issue one, there's a character they need to put into the movie, and that's Rick Jones.
Rick Jones, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, bring Rick into that movie, and damn, it's gonna be funny. That's what you need, just some character to bounce off the Hulk. Let stuff happen.
It was just really interesting. One of the things that I loved about the Avengers, and if you guys haven't seen my video review of it, go check it out on shiftedtoyou.com. One of the things that I loved about this movie is that when you get a sense, when you finally see the entire team on screen for the first time, you know, besides the times like when they're really like fighting and kind of squabbling amongst each other, when they're really working as a team, for the first moment in the movie, it's just you really get a sense like, wow, this is like that you really are paying attention. You're really engrossed in them as a team. And that's something I really don't see in a lot of other team superhero movies, like, for example, the X-Men, or like, for example, the more recent one, X-Men First Class. As good as that movie was, like, them as the team or a group that, as they were doing different stuff together or fighting different enemies or whatnot, you didn't really kind of, really get the sense like, okay, this is a team, this is a unit, like compared to how the Avengers handled it, because everybody, since they were coming from different movies or different, aspects of the Marvel film universe, if you want to call it, everybody felt like their own rogue for the most part. But when they really came together as one big unit, it was like, wow, it was literally something spectacular. Like, what did you think of that?
Oh, the moment where they actually come together as a team is amazing. And again, one of my other favorite moments in the movie is where the alien swarm is coming down, and Captain America jumps on top of the fire or the police car, and he's telling the cops what to do. And one cop's like, "Why in the world am I going to listen to you?" And then three of the aliens come down and he beats them down, and then the cop just falls in line and listens to
Yeah,
him.
that was
And
hilarious.
yeah, and it's funny because the rest of the team, that's kind of a good an analogy for the entire team, because throughout the movie they're all like, "Who are you? What are you doing? Why are we listening to you?" But once stuff starts going down, they instinctively go to him for leadership.
You know
And I
what? You know one
love
thing I thought was really interesting too, and I really give props to Robert Downey Jr. And it goes, without say, for the rest of the cast, that were in their own respective movies. Each character feels exactly like how they were in their own movies. Like, Robert Downey Jr. still is witty, he's charmful, he's hilarious, exactly as he was in Iron Man 1 and 2. And then you got Chris Evans that really has that, that leadership, aura around him, that like, okay, he's the more idealistic one of the team. He felt exactly like that in Captain America, and he brings that same thing. And even Thor, Thor feels, he doesn't feel as much as arrogant as he was in the Thor movie, but you feel like, okay, this is a little bit of a mythological being. Like he's an outsider, but he has a presence on screen. And I felt the same way when I was watching him in Thor. And I love that about each individual superhero like that. Like how did you think, like, when they, with different characters mixing from their own movies?
Well, it was really neat because each character did have an arc, which is important, and it's something that Joss Whedon was uniquely suited for doing this movie. Each character has its own story. They are from different movies. They've all done their own things, and it's almost like these are, if you take the Black Widow parts, you can make that into its own movie if you wanted to. Cap comes to grips with being in this world in this movie for the most part. Black Widow kind of feels she's a hero now. Her ledger's back in the black. Hawkeye has the horrible thing happen where he's being controlled throughout most of the movie, and when he comes out of that, he has to deal with that, the repercussions of that. And Hulk finds that working with a team kind of helps him cut loose. Everyone has their moment. Even smaller characters, have moments in the movie and have character arcs. And wow, it's just amazing. And I knew Whedon could do it, and I knew I was gonna like it. But it's nice to see the world liking it. And I'm reading articles that Avengers is on track to hit 1 billion this week.
Yes, literally. They did a
Woo!
huge opening. I
Yeah.
mean, one thing that I also want to bring, because you mentioned minor characters, Agent Coulson, I think that's how you pronounce it. Agent Coulson, which is the guy that appeared all the way back in Iron Man 1, which is like the Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. that's kind of like stuck with us for the longest. Now, I know we're going to get into a little bit of spoiler territory, but I'm pretty sure by now everybody's seen the movie at least 2 times. So I think we'll be okay. Agent Coulson, what happens to him in the movie, it was really impactful. Like, what did you think of that? And also, what did you think of Samuel L. Jackson's performance as Nick Fury?
Well, I'm going to touch the Nick Fury thing first because I have a little more to say in the Coulson thing. What I really liked about Fury is it would have been very easy to make Fury the biggest badass in town because that's what Samuel L. Jackson always does. What I liked about this movie is that you saw a softer side of him. You didn't see him. His first reaction wasn't always to kick butt and take names. He was just trying to make everything work with his people, and I really liked that. This was a little bit more devious of a portrayal, I think. And the reason I say that is that the thing with the playing cards, he kind of
Yeah.
pushed the Avengers into becoming a team. And in my opinion, and I could be wrong about this, this is a theory I'm going to share with you guys.
All right, here we go.
I think Fury really was more devious than we thought because at the beginning of Avengers, Tony Stark mentioned something that is a staple of the comics. In Shield, there is something called the life model decoy, otherwise known as an LMD. Um, what they're used for in Shield is basically to send you out in these little missions, and maybe you get killed, but it's okay because it's not you. It's
Very
this
true. That's a big thing with
right.
Nick Fury in the comics.
Exactly, and Tony Stark brings that up in the Avengers movie, and then Coulson dies, and then Fury purposely says they needed a push. So tell me Coulson's dead because I don't think he is.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think, especially since he's been with us for already a couple movies and, everybody, the movie audience anyway has kind of, had some sort of, growing relationship with him, for the most part because he's very funny, especially like in Iron Man 2 and in Thor. For the most part, he's really funny every time he's on screen with any one of the different heroes. So it would be very foolish to kind of throw him away. So I like that theory. I really like that theory.
Yeah, I hope I'm right. And they've actually even brought him into a few different Marvel incarnations in the past month or so. He's now in the Marvel comics, which he hadn't been before. He's actually a character that's hanging out in Shield, and he's actually in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon that just started
Oh,
recently.
I did not know that.
He's the undercover principal of Peter's high school.
That's
Principal.
that's pretty cool. I mean,
Yeah, so he's all over. So why is he dead? There's no way.
yeah, so before we kind of move on with the comic book movies, we got to talk about the after credits or the during end credits because literally I could say with great confidence that everybody in that theater when I saw this movie lost their damn minds when they saw that after credits or just saw I get it's not really after credits, it's like during the credits because there was two. Spoiler alert for anybody that doesn't want to know if you haven't seen it already, which I'm pretty sure you have. But we get that shot, of Thanos, which any comic book fan that reads comics knows who Thanos is, and it was a fanboy moment. I mean, what was
Oh
it
yeah.
like for you when you saw that?
Oh, it was pretty amazing for me, because it said to me because I was thinking to myself this whole time, how are they going to up the ante for Avengers 2, and how much bigger do you get than Thanos? And it's funny when the alien leader, whatever they were calling
The
him,
Jadari, I think it was called.
yeah, Chithari, the stupid name from the Ultimate
I
books.
swear,
Uh,
before we even go further, quick little tidbit. Did you expect them to be the Skrulls? Because there was big talk about that before the movie
well,
came out.
well, here's the thing, and this is kind of odd. Marvel has its Ultimate line of comics, which, for those of you that don't know, is an alternate reality version of the Marvel characters.
Hmm.
And in the Ultimate Universe, the Skrulls are known as the Chitauri. So,
Oh, okay.
in essence, we did get the Skrulls, only they just were generic aliens that didn't do anything.
Okay, but yeah, continue on with about Thanos.
Oh yeah, so okay, yeah, Thanos, the leader of the Chitauri, actually says something about to do this is to court death. And as you know, if you know Thanos, that's exactly what he does. He's literally courting death. And Thanos just smiles, and I was like, oh wow. I blew a nerd circuit. I did. It was really really cool.
It was very interesting. I mean, again, it probably does not get as big as that. I mean, they could have gone any number of directions, drawing from different Avengers lore, whatnot. I was thinking maybe they could hint at Ultron. That would have been cool because even though they didn't have Hank Pym or was it Janet the Wasp and Giant Man for all you guys that don't know, like that, but it would have been cool, but I think they handled it very, very well. I mean, it's gonna be very interesting because we already got dates for Thor 2, for Captain America 2, for Iron Man 3. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they again for each one of those movies they kind of do like what Marvel's been doing with the after credits leading up and hinting at Avengers 2. I mean, do you think
Oh
that's
sure.
something they would actually do?
Oh yeah, I'm certain they will, especially with the success of the movie. And another thing to keep in mind is very early on, before when Whedon first got involved with Avengers, he had a meeting. He went to have a meeting with a guy named Edgar Wright, who, if you're a movie fan, you probably know. Edgar Wright has done some cool stuff in the past, Shaun of the Dead, stuff like
Hmm.
that. Edgar Wright was work in the very early process of working on an Ant-Man movie, and Whedon went to Edgar Wright and said, "Okay, is there any way we can fit Ant-Man into the Avengers movie without screwing up what you're trying to do for your film?" And they discussed it, and it was decided that they'd rather see the Ant-Man movie come out first then have him pop up in a later Avengers movie. So we will see him at some point, I think.
I think so too. I mean, Giant Man slash Ant Man was one of the original Avengers. Same thing with the Wasp. If you guys have read Avengers, I think it was Avengers 1, correct? I could be wrong. So,
Yeah, Avengers 1, and actually, strangely enough, the one person who was not a founding member that most people
is
associate with the
Black.
Avengers, well, Cap.
Oh yeah, Cap, because Cap was found later on. That's true.
Yeah, he was in issue 4. Yeah, he was not officially a founding member of the Avengers, but
Oh,
Ant-Man was.
but to kind of wrap this up before we move on to other comic book stuff, do you think that maybe it was not necessarily a true faithful adaptation of the original Avengers storyline, but do you think it really nailed a lot of the points that fans were expecting or unexpecting?
I think so, and I think more importantly than did they get the facts right, because you're never gonna get everything right, and that's fine. They got the heart right, and that's the important thing. That's what a lot of fans get caught up with the continuity and oh, this is wrong. Cap shouldn't be here yet, blah blah blah. But the key is getting the heart correct. If you get the core concept, the feeling, then you're okay.
Yeah, very, very true. So, again, if you haven't seen Avengers yet, and you've been living underneath a rock, go check it out. Swanza for everybody, and also that moment with between Loki and the Hulk. That's all I'm gonna say. Not gonna spoil it. That was literally had to be the funniest moment in that movie, hands down. Everybody just bursted out laughing when they saw it. But moving on from there. Okay, let's talk about some other comic book movies that are right around the corner, which, in my opinion, they need, after seeing Avengers, they have to come with something in order to really kind of give Avengers a run for its money, which I think right now is very hard to do. You got The Dark Knight Rises from Christopher Nolan, which is the last in the Batman series of movies that he's been doing, as well as The Amazing Spider-Man. There's other movies, but like those are like the two real big comic book movies, at least today. Like, what are your thoughts on either one of those movies, Gene?
Well, I'm a little bit worried about Spider-Man. I know. I think the general consensus among the public who likes Spider-Man but likes him from the movies is that it's too soon for another reboot, and I think that might hurt the box office. Personally, I mean, I've been reading comics for almost 35 years, so I know that I like John Byrne's Spider-Man, and that doesn't mean I can't like Dan Slott's Spider-Man. But the movie people are a little different. They like their versions, and so I think that movie is gonna maybe suffer from that, but I hope it's good. An interesting thing that I think is going to happen is because of Avengers being so positive and so bright, and so it's such a successful movie that wasn't dark. I think we may see people looking at Dark Knight and being like comparing it to Avengers, and maybe it's going to come out wanting a little bit.
That reminds me of? Remember when Superman Returns came out and then The Dark Knight or Batman Begins came out? That it
Sure,
reminds me of the exact same thing because you look at what is it? You look at Batman and it's dark, it's gritty, it's realistic compared to Superman that was done by Bryan Singer. That was a little bit much more light, ideal, and it kind of paid more homage to the what is it? To the Richard Donner Supermans. I think even then the continuity was kind of supposed to be a little bit of the same, a little bit if I remember correctly, but
sure.
the exact same idea was a kind of could apply.
Yeah, absolutely. It might be like the reverse of that kind of. Yeah, because I just think people want that lighthearted stuff now. It's why the Marvel movies have been as successful as they have. Because they have a lot of humor in there, and it's funny because the Nolan Batman stuff is probably successful for the opposite reason. So we'll see if there's a negative backlash or not. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think any movie is going to beat Avengers this year.
I mean, yeah, that's a very plausible statement because I mean, before I saw Avengers, I thought that Hunger Games was going to be the best movie this year, even though it's not a comic book movie or whatnot, but just as a film. But after seeing Avengers, I think like literally a lot more people came out of that movie satisfied than when they saw the Hunger Games, and I think maybe there's a possibility we may see the same thing with Dark Knight Rises. Because obviously since it's an ending to a trilogy, and it's Nolan's last movie officially, with the Batman franchise, and the same thing with Spider-Man because again, like you said, it's a little bit too early for a reboot. They're doing a lot of things differently. They have the web shooters back. He doesn't no longer have the actual built-in webs. Was it little web sprouts or whatnot? But let me ask you this question because we're kind of getting to the wrap-up point here. What do you think of what Nolan's doing with Batman so far? I mean, we've seen pictures of Catwoman. We've seen and heard Bane, because before Avengers there was the new trailer for Batman The Dark Knight Rises. From what you've seen of the movie so far, because we're about a month or close to about 2 months away from the actual release, what do you think of Nolan's take so far for this kind of final installment?
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting wrap up. The thing that intrigues me most is that it's taking place 8 years after the last movie, and I'm like, wow, that's very
That's a big
interesting.
jump.
That is a big jump, and I'm wondering, has he been Batman all this time? Has he not been Batman all this time? What's going on? Uh, I will be honest. I am probably the worst person to ask about these movies, and for some reason, I'm just not as enthused about the Nolan Batman movies as some people are.
Really, any
Excuse
particular
me.
reason why?
I'm not sure. I just can't. For some reason, I can't bite into it. I enjoyed Dark Knight quite a bit. I think Batman Begins was a good, solid story, and I just can't put my finger on it. But if I had to only see either Spider Man or Batman this summer, I would just go see Spider Man.
And speaking of Spider-Man, same type of question. What do you think? Besides the fact being a reboot or whatnot, what do you think of the handling with Spider-Man this time? Because I mean, we got Gwen Stacy this time instead of Mary Jane Parker. I mean, Mary Jane Watson. You got, again, the web shooters, and then we got the Lizard as like the main villain of the actual movie.
Well, yeah, and it's about time they gave us a lizard. They teased it. They teased us for so long about it, and they're finally delivering. The choice of Gwen to me is amazing. I was kind of upset that Mary Jane was cast initially in Spider-Man One, even though I grew to love those movies a lot. I really enjoyed the Raimi movies, or at least the first two, and I like the choice of Gwen. I can live with that change. Captain Stacy being in the movie is great. I love that they're trying to just find other parts of the Spider-Man mythos that we haven't seen yet, and I like that they're building up Norman Osborn. You can even see it in the trailer. He's talking about he has powerful enemies, and you see the Oscorp building. And I'm thinking, wow, I think they're going to build it up, and I think you'll probably see an end credit segment with either the Green Goblin or Norman Osborn.
That'd be
And
interesting.
yeah, and I think hopefully, I do one thing I'm asking, and I know it's too late because they've already filmed this, but I don't want to waste the first half hour of this movie watching Peter get bit by a radioactive
Yep,
spider.
same thing. I said the
I am
exact same thing.
so tired of origin stories in comic book movies. Oh God.
We just want to
So
get the ball rolling.
I know, and it's like, yeah, you know what? We all know how it happened. Everyone on Earth knows that, like, let's say Superman was rocketed from Krypton. So let's just get over it and move on.
I mean, hey, we got a new Superman movie down the horizon. From with has a handing from Chris Nolan, but I think it's being done by Zack Snyder, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe
That
you're right.
that's going to be interesting. But one more thing about Spider-Man before we kind of wrap up. Do you think maybe because I know a lot of people were upset, with Spider-Man 3's take on Venom. Do you think maybe down the line, if not in a like maybe a 2 or 3 for the Amazing Spider-Man, that we would maybe get like a redux or redo for Venom, or maybe even in a Carnage storyline?
He's a very popular villain. I think that there's definitely the possibility. The interesting thing is that I think that Venom is probably the reason for this reboot in a strange way, because Raimi had number three all set up as the conclusion of the Harry story and the Sandman thing,
Yeah, I
and
remember that.
and it was the companies, and the company was like, "Hey, you guys, you got to do Venom. What the hell?" And he didn't want to do Venom, and they kind of made him stick him in there. And I think that kind of started like Raimi's thought process, like they're telling me what to do, and I don't really want that so much. That may have led to him leaving the movies.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see them. I mean, Avengers already just came out. I've probably seen it twice already. We got the next one I think coming out. I believe it's Spider-Man, if I'm correct. I don't understand it as far as comic book movies. And then later on in July, we got The Dark Knight. So it's going to be a very interesting time for movies. A lot of great movies coming out this summer. So, but with that being said, we're coming towards the end of this interview. Again, thanks a lot, Gene, for coming on. Again, I love Nerd Nation. It's awesome. If you guys have not listened to Nerd Nation's podcast yet, you definitely need to check it out. Go to the Blog Talk Radio, check out their newest episodes. When you said every Thursday, correct? That a new episode pops up online.
Yes, actually, we go live every Thursday. Well, occasionally we have to switch days. I have the whole day job thing. Most times we air from Thursday nights 9:30 to 11:30 or 9:30 to 10, 11, one or the other. But we're always there. We're always live. And tonight, actually, we're airing tonight. There's a show tonight. My normal co-host Seek is off in Las Vegas, probably getting himself in trouble. So I have a special co-host, Martin Piero of Cosmic Times Comics, coming on with me.
Cool. Sounds like fun. So anyway, again, thanks again. Any other last minute shout outs you want to give before we wrap up?
Well, yeah, one for sure. Our new site, we're finally getting it together, and we're putting up shows as they occur. That's www.nerdnation.co. Check us out there. Let's see. I want to thank you for having us on the show.
Of course.
Uh, and as for upcoming appearances, we talked about Spider-Man and Batman. It looks like Nerd Nation will probably be at the Movie Co. Parisian in City Place in West Palm Beach prior to those movies opening up, promoting a local comic store and the show. So more details on that as we have them, but that's what's coming up for us.
Sounds cool. So again, thanks again for coming on. Thanks again for listening, guys, to the Bit, the Boys in the Tube, from Gene Hoyle, from Nerd Nation, and myself. Hope you guys stay epic and check out our next episode. Talk to you all later, peoples.